Welcome, viewers and listeners. I am your host, Tuani Sinclair, and I'm joined by Stanford Watson and Tevin Lewis. Tevin is a recent graduate from the Edna Manley College, and we featured his work in a previous episode where we discussed the final year exhibition. So, Tevin, my first question, um, what did what were your thoughts about the final year show personally? Did you achieve what you set out to achieve, or what was the reception like? All of that.
All right. In terms of what I set out to achieve, I would say I would have actually. There are some areas where I would say I actually surprised myself with what was achieved. But
Mhm.
I knew that if certain circumstances, like within myself, I still know that that wasn't the ultimate of what certain things could have gone to. And some of the things were out of my control, like, for example, as it relates to the weather and certain elements of the actual facility, where the work could have extended or even take on slightly different form due
Mhm.
to certain little curatorial things that could have been done a bit different. But apart from that, I would say that the whole experience even kind of gave me a surprise in terms of like, because I'm kind of used to it now in terms of getting a kind of at first somewhat negative feedback to my work, but then to the volume of which persons are actually interested in the information and not just looking, that it actually took me by surprise, where I was like, all right, expect a lot more negatives.
Mhm.
Well, how would that um affect your in terms of your future going forward? Is it more of what you did? Is it same kind of exploration?
Well, it has kind of geared me into certain directions of interest now, where due to this time of focus that I was able to get, and with benefit actually from the lockdown, where there was a lot more isolation with the work. So
Mhm.
there was more times to actually dislike. So it wasn't just meeting for an assignment or so. You actually get the period for become attached and detached from the work to where you can even look at it from a more objective sense, like, and not just about what me want, but why I'm really there. So now got
Mhm.
me on concrete. It couldn't just be for just art's sake. So it even kind of put me into a direction now in terms of something that was in me as it relates to even more of a love for this side of nature and stuff, where at first if you had just asked me casually like, are you interested in arthropods? Because arthropods was the main topic of my final year, I would probably say no. But but the but the experience have given to me is that time to actually dissect my own experiences and the connections that I have to these things. So
Mhm.
it has given me a clearer direction of stuff that I want to actually go forward in for the future. And yes, I would say I did gain from that.
All right. I mean, you
What would
mentioned.
Huh?
what would stop you
What would stop me?
mm, from continuing?
Hmm.
Well, I right now I don't know, because not being even as simple as being home since the whole thing, or in the process of fully coming back home, like, I've realized where even certain shifts in my mental health is being affected by not, or whenever I'm not actually creating. So it's almost as if now where I had to seriously take up this as a responsibility to know that, all right, me have to go create.
Mhm.
Either way, even I don't know, so it's legit and about the hype or getting known at this point. We realize that, well, I'm very much more irritable when we not create, like certain little things where I notice for myself, where with even just such a short period since
Mhm.
the final year, where it's like, all right, if me ignore this, me know in myself so I got miserable.
Alright. I mean, we soon get into what the work was about, but you mentioned something earlier. You said you expected a lot more negative feedback. Why is that? Is it the subject matter, or why you expected the more negative
Right.
feedback?
So it's a mixture of the subject matter and usually the my personal aesthetic, which seems to always give off a more negative feedback at first. That and the topic, which was, I know it's already something that, how do I talk about this without prettying it up but still putting it out there to somebody as useful information. And
Okay.
that especially now where it's not like me did I go draw fields of honeybees, pollinate and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, which would kind of be more to the side of beautification of it. So it's
Okay.
even where I know that I'm not beautifying now, so it's more likely to get a pushback,
Mm-hmm.
especially also considering our Jamaica's religious climate, where the first thing with them with an extra eye or something, the
Look
devil,
demonic. Look
yeah, man,
demonic.
I even had a lady came to me in the middle of a conversation during the exhibition and said when she went at the door, a energy slap her and she never sure if she could go in, and when she go in she see the first Illuminati symbol and she want to talk to me about that, and I'm like, what?
I was at the show. I didn't say no Illuminati symbol, but so all right.
But yes.
So you say your outward appearance and the subject matter and all of that.
Mhm.
I mean, what is it about your outward appearance you think make people have this negative approach?
Well, the funny thing is it's very two-sided, as in like, so who I experienced that kind of response from,
Mm,
all right, that's it, kind of crossfaded, so like persons who knew me, I would say before art,
mm,
but when I was less involved,
mm.
they would have more have it as them have me as the opposite, so where I'm probably more of the office guy, the etc. Because I'm generally generally not talk,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
I interpret that as that kind of personality. But
Mm,
I realize that persons who become a bit more closer to me now as it relates to me and my creative side or art form, them have to kind of like draw and hold on and say, yo, like, them always class me in art what I call now the stereotypical classification of the quote unquote mad artist. Because in truth, like, when it come on to my work, like I've realized that what it works for me, me can't really business as it relates to even sometimes outward appearance. And then even connecting back to where even realizing that a lot of things that went into the development of are still going into the development of my character is a lot of things where pick out in the work now where at first it didn't become an intentional thing where, oh, may I do this on purpose to add
mm.
identity to it. Now is where it is even where like person saying the work that I did for my final year looks like me, and I can't even begin to fathom that because I'm like, them things are not really, which part of my features on a time I
Mm,
locate this, but it's generally even to where you would say no, like I'm not going to deny that there are certain aspects of my characteristics, things that I'm looking into that technically would be the taboo or
mm,
quote unquote dark, but it's just of how it's this. I guess it's always this thing where it came from being somewhat of a black sheep in the family in the
mm.
sense now where
But me tell you what it is. Me know exactly what it is. You know. But did I think you would have said it, but let me tell you, Bridget, you're black, you wear your ear a certain type of way, you're comfortably in your blackness. And I think that's what it is. Let's be real.
You can't please everybody, and you
Mm.
probably can't please nobody. And regardless of what anybody want to think, as an artist, first person you have to please is yourself. Because once you start make the effort,
Mm.
change your aesthetic to fit
Mm.
into somebody's expectation or whatever, then you start being dishonest to the work. And sometimes when you
And
start being,
yourself.
eh?
And yourself as well.
Right, you start, generally you start being dishonest.
Mm.
And the work itself recognize when you're being dishonest and it come back to kick you. And that's why I say,
Mm.
so it's one of the things as an artist myself, me realize, please me first.
Mm.
When you put it, because you expect people to accept that your intellect that was involved and is working and work that way. So they're going to accept that, them not going to accept it. And if you really try to please people, then you're going to end up at madhouse.
Mm. Yeah,
Yes.
and everything, your expression, the way you look, the way you understand. So, anyways, we get off track a bit.
So my final year work was looking at the evolution of man, his environment, and psychology through arthropods, and arthropods being in things from insects, crustaceans, myriapods, arachnids. So animals with segmented bodies and jointed appendages, multi-limbs. So it was looking at it from multiple angles, especially mainly influence from film. So it's looking at how much of a big influence film has been on art itself, where it's not even really seen as art anymore. Like
Mm.
nobody's really thinking of, oh, just watch or just go experience a piece of artwork. So to how normalized it has become, and it has been such a way where a lot of information where we digest visually is coming from a lot of the stuff that we watch, and
Mm.
realize that arthropods were kind of always, majority of the times, 95, 98% of the times, depicted as horrors and pests and a lot. So it's oftentimes to the negative side, and it
Mm.
has been, and it's looking back at this relationship that man has had psychologically with arthropods, kind of looking at why this deep-rooted psychology of fear, but at the same time we're so so dependent, because they're not codependent on us. As if
Mm.
we go, they will still survive. But if they
Mm.
go, we will surely eventually go. But then it's to look at how this trickle down into other places in our lives, where from like technological development to how arthropods influence certain things, going from mythology. So it all started at looking at how to evolve the
Mm.
human form, but then it broadened as I continued into a kind of journal, a living journal now, where this experience where I'm putting together different aspects of both the past, future, and the present to create this kind of stew, this mix where everything isn't, so it's not trying to create a thing, but it's where information is what is technically what's creating the art, and not necessarily just the imagery. So even with information at one place might not
Mhm.
even have to do specific. So it becomes a collage in itself, a giant collage where it's not just about like, you know, cutting and pasting, but how do I collage information to
Mhm.
to speculate, as well as utilize not just speculative information, but information about facts, that things that we may not be able to see just because of the capability of our eyes. So it's
Ah,
when bringing this to a life size where it seems alien, but really and truly, nothing in my final year show is anything actually from this world, because we only can get material from this world. So, but it's like nothing out of the world. These are actually just basically superimposed features, ideas, functions, and stuff over other elements that arthropods tie into.
But so, all right, I saw the work. Well, let me start. I saw the work in person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wasn't. I didn't really get. Well, I didn't really get the sense that information was being relayed to me. That might be a me problem. What were some of the techniques you used to relay this information outside of just the imagery? Because I don't remember there being a lot of text. I don't remember that. So I'm just asking, what were some of the ways that you tried to relay this information to the viewer?
Well, apart from the text, but in relation, in the function of the actual environment that was created, that some persons actually did come in and get it surprising, because the aim also wasn't to make it just also about relaying the information. So this is where now it's bordering back on is a scholarly approach, but still also it was also very, what you'd say now, done in a way to like similar to nature, you would say, because nature does random selection, but nature has order to its chaos at the same time. So it's like working in both of those. So some of the panels were very scripted in terms of information. Some it relied more on, for example, the different processes. So like the relationship between the ground or clay pieces that were on the floor, to like even the pieces that were growing in terms of relating back metallic ore. So thinking of it like minerals, and how would these creatures actually logically feed, and what would they contribute back to this system that I am creating. So it's so I can, so in terms of how things nested, where things were birthed, the combination, like the how it related to what was in the environment, where it is as it relates to like mimicry. So it's carrying in back functions and how they would actually relate, so that even one of the aim was not to also just let it be. So for me, it was very conversation driven as well. So because a lot of the things would be new information being presented to persons, so it may not even, a lot of it wouldn't actually be understood. So now as the artist, also ended up taking on a role automatically as the project, as did as and it wouldn't, not to say a scientist, but somebody who is there to teach or
Why
deliver
not a
that
scientist?
message.
Why not a scientist?
Well,
A
it's not
science,
really, yeah.
a
It's not
science
just
man.
that a scientist. I just never want to jump over in the scientist them
Come on, a
lane.
scientist man.
But why
Artist, a
not?
scientist man. Sorry, Mr. Watson, go ahead.
Yeah, I say why not? But in terms of the work, because it sounds like you're trying to generate a kind of conversation.
Mm.
We understand, we understand when the work is done. You are in Jamaica, and I've always said this. The work go to England, and you're not going to be there to say all the way you just say. How you would expect the interpretation? What you expect from the interpretation from the viewers? Do you have because it's not something that is readily discernible. So how you expect people to relate to the work?
For those which was actually in it, where a lot of the things now where person, well, I saw it actually, I see it play out. So it's either through experience now, where I can say, okay, this was one thing that actually went into. So like multiple things in terms of even the imagery, like even with creating the imagery, like certain colors were used specific. So just using this as a aid to carry where I'm going with this. So for example, the colors were generally, arthropods are represented in more grunge, more earth tones, a lot of the more darker colors. So even one thing as I had to think about, all right, how can fear, I know that fear would have been a big factor in it. How can I not allow fear to be one of the major reactions or information that persons get from this without me being there to say, oh, this is not that. And it's not to even not say that as well, because analyzing and looking at this fear that we have is one thing that is a part of it. So what went into that was looking at the colors used and the disassociation that comes with our brains when we see certain
Black.
colors and
You say
human
black.
skin. Honestly,
Because
so
people associate black with
with
the fear
colors.
with black.
Mm.
That man no colors, black. People associate the fear with black. Continue. There's something we want to say after your talk still. We'll continue.
So it was even looking into not just even say using random colors now, but looking back to the actual color palettes of different arthropods in nature and how I can tie each of them back now into this representation now where when persons actually see them and them never actually see the darker imagery where somewhat it created a sense of more safety, while in reality a lot of the colors used were actually warning colors that would actually be that this thing is dangerous. So but due to our disassociation with dark tones, and then especially with that being placed on arthropods, so now they have this kind of stigmatized look. So when I show about these also truthfully colors, actual colors, fantastic colors that exist in nature, people feel a lot more. It's easier for them to digest while not knowing that technically if they had walked into a space like this in real life, it would legit mean that they are dead. So in looking at evil tag, taking that into consideration where certain elements of it were kind of left in imagery and things that people could read, and persons would ask me like, is it about crustaceans, or they would single out certain specific thing and they would know that all right, it has something to do with creatures and evolution and and science. And then so that's why there were certain like different aspects of the room like what would I even function different, like where you would have now where the video that was playing was more in tune to the to certain other pieces like the collages at the back where you would see where the whole black and white and connecting certain information of what's going on in the room without directly saying like this is it. But because one of the aims that I have, is to also, regardless of anything when me did want to talk and say all about the work, why it became even that's what I say now. One other words slip out of our mouth. But because the type of experience that the work was done where you would have to actually go into the space and experience it, where one of the aim was to create experiences for persons to actually not really say just question reality, but more question the value of the experiences you have, in the sense where we're looking at it where we're coming from nothing into where we are now. So technically, every experience count, if you get me. So even the bad one, them, because it's all accumulation. So it's looking at what kind of experience could I leave and give somebody where when them enter this space, the kind of immersive experience that they get would create just an experience, whether it be negative for them, whether them get so a part, so I'm not gonna lie, a part of this was very kind of social experimentish for me, and I did enjoy it. Even the Illuminati feedback, because it never far from the back of my mind that these are the possible. So it's even knowing the possible interpretations of what certain things in the work might allude to. So it's just that I got the surprise that persons were getting and understanding that more in a more. So I guess I would say in some essence I was surprised. So it's not, I'm not sure if it's a fluke, but like in terms of even the information being received.
But is it an interpretation, or is it that they recognize a symbol that have specific kind of meaning to them, and that's what they hone in on when they look at the work?
Well, I wouldn't say they're really specific symbols, but I can say there are traits that belong to certain things that are repeated, where even if you're not an avid observer of these things on a daily, it's like certain evil, like as it even relates to the form. So it's even looking at the triangle. So I looked at that, how the triangle is used in nature, and especially in arthropods and in certain animals. So it's even where a lot of us don't realize that almost every, if not every arthropod has triangular intersections, or they're divided up into certain angles using triangles as a form, because the triangle itself sits as a simple but one of the most sturdiest forms in nature. So it's how their body plan even utilize that. So even with certain way how the head shape and them. So I know that certain things were repeated, and then like especially with the multiple limbs, like the minute people see a lot of moving things, they kind of get that crawl kind of feeling. So I know that kind of hinted a lot to, okay, so this is of that kind of nature, without being direct in saying that this exactly is that type of leg or anything.
You know, two things. The first thing is that some of the most dangerous animals on this planet. So what wrong with this one? Sorry. Some of the most dangerous animals on this planet. Very colorful. Some of the most poisonous animals. Yeah, you have a frog named the tree dart or dart frog. Colorful, but deadly.
Some
Yeah, you know, there's a bigger conversation that can be had about your work. And yeah, I wonder if you're aware, right? Because describing the way you describe your work, I think there are parallels that can be drawn with with just even the black experience. You know, that's something I am personally interested in. That's what my work is all about. And you know, when you talk about this fear that people have of arthropods, it just embedded in them a very being. You know, they see this creature and this being and then fear it. You know, parallels can be drawn with the black experience. I mean,
it's something that I couldn't even ignore also going into the project, where
right,
I
because
know
it's very prevalent to me. It's very in your face. I mean, even just hearing you talk about it, connections just are made. You know, so yeah.
even with the comparison, as you would say now, in terms of like value, where the value system of where what we, when we say insect, what we said that we're how the degenerative value and context that the word takes on is even similar, as you could say, to when you would start to think of the black experience, where it has become this kind of, so it's even a parallel there, where in terms of the treating of persons like insect, while not actually realizing the actual value. And then even with the alienated nature of some of the forms in the work, which even with some of them I did even reference even certain specific African myths and stuff. But it's even where now, where you see where this kind of alienated experience now, where even when you looked at, even when they came into like, I could just use even the Yoruba people group for an example, where I remember a conversation I was having where persons thought that people have certain people would think that white people would think that they're mad based on them color combination, like it was such a whole alienated experience for them, where it's even a similar thing where it's almost like I'm creating a metaphorical representation of our existence also.
Right. And that's how I kind of ready because even with how you say you change the color of the creatures to affect the experience that viewers would have. You know, it is a similar thing with black people now. That's why them bleed so much because them a try change them experience and them to realize they're changing the color. Now go erase the fear that racist white people have about us, and it now go change the circumstances either. So there are only parallels that can be
Also,
drawn. It's very interesting.
did based on your experience, Tevin, did people make that kind of association with blackness, you blackness, and the work that you produce?
Well, there were few persons who few wasn't the majority, but I have a handful of persons who said, like, just off the top, not many who got in deep, but he had certain persons who said they realize a certain essence of indigeneity in the nature of the work. Some persons said it felt very African as it relates to the colors and even everything. Um, there was even one person who didn't come in the room at first because them said that them, even though this is a very ignorant comparison, but they said that they felt like they were entering some form of voodoo hall, and I'm just there like so
Who
it's
was that? A black person?
yeah, man.
Oh. You know, the reason why I'm asking, black people seem to have less of an affinity towards voodoo than anybody else because people who are not black find it so interesting
Mhm.
to the point where they want to study it. And black people are the only one me here are run up and down.
Well,
And
but sorry, that was it.
the last question, Tevin, is where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Because one of the things with your work is not quote unquote collectible in the sense where the kind of collectors who buy Jamaican art, they're
Mhm.
not cultured in such a
But
way to
but
collect.
but, but me no want things like Kevin creating work for just the Jamaican audience neither.
No, but that's why I ask where you see yourself 5 years from now, because the collectors who mostly in tune with what's happening in Jamaica, they don't really collect work that is of similar nature to yours. Not saying that you're business with that. I'm just saying that is not the case. So you making your work, obviously, it comes from a place of passion because say you might make it and nothing might come of it, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be something more driving you. Where you see yourself 5 years from now?
Well, 5 years. I not go say I can't give you the exact on that, but the aim is to actually keep well, because as much as how the nature that the work took on isn't very much as you say, like, 'cause that's the one thing when me I make it, like, when people are like, ask me so if me start price I'm like, price, like, before we even get into the whole conversation, they're like, we could even keep it logical even with the size of one of the panel them. If somebody did say buy even say 2 3 of this, we know say them and actually pay with value.
Mm.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but very it done reasonable.
Unlikely, very unlikely.
Unlikely. That's an unlikely situation for happen. So this definitely could not be from just a place of wanting or gain, but it's the aim now where 5 years time I would like to have myself in a situation where I am even much able to better deliver or carry out some of the information within my work, even into a more plausible environmental factor. So it's even where I want to use my art as a channel now to even start getting involved back in actual ways where I can contribute back to the actual development of Jamaica in some way, and not just to say, yeah, always I go and want to create to give people something to look on, but at the same time I realize the necessity where the artists really have to wear more than one caps right now. So it's even
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly,
actually
exactly.
realizing now Alright, maybe even if it's to even say to even more to even go over into a market before I look on even and reaching other markets so we can pull capital even back into this. It's where how my work can even manifest itself into. Even you did mention it one time when you did pass through with my work was that if me did think about set design and then that's become a thing now where or even our approach to set design now where as even
Right.
production in general where it's even like carrying back or bringing a certain type of process to the creativity to help even boost the whole cultural standard of Jamaican films and a lot of other stuff. So there are areas where I see where this can lead me off into. Like if me to tell you right now, so I know the exact set of steps to take to get there. We don't know it yet, but have a clearer, like it did much clearer now than
Yeah.
third, fourth year. Just start
Yeah.
final year of what are
Yeah.
the actual.
Nobody knows the exact steps to take. That's also another problem with being here in Jamaica. Um, I mean, me did say that was the last question, but I have one more. Me kind of cheat. What's in the immediate future for Tevin Lewis?
Well, currently, actually, I look on some residencies, but exactly after that, after graduation period, I'll be a part of resume the struggle part 3.
Right, Tevin Lewis. Thank you for coming by.
A pleasure.
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure having you here because I realized you have a lot to say. Maybe I just me need to steer the conversation in the right places. Cause I figure say you have a lot to say. Um. Anyways, that's our episode.
Yeah,
So
All
but
right.
what may I say, Tevin, me say it already, me proud down and still, I'm glad that they wanna reach us, so no make me feel old still because just when they wanna come in at the school. But I'm glad they reach us, so I'm really feel, really very proud. And there was no indication early on because me did teach him to, Africa, me teach him drawing.
mm,
Mm,
Yeah, sometime in there and sometime there. But there was no indication, that, this is where he was headed.
mm,
But
mm,
what I'm glad is that within the school, you find the time to give thinking thought to possibilities,
mm.
and you were led and you followed and create too, and this is where you are now. But the the, the world, well, the universe is yours. So you have to grasp.
Me did want
Yeah.
to ask about the fire, but me figure say that I go on for your next hour. We might have a special episode for that. Mr. Watson. No, let's
Yes.
start with Tevin. Tevin, where can the people find you on social media?
well, right now, only social media that I'm on is Instagram. That's Kingdom underscore D underscore. That's KINDOM underscore D underscore.
All right. Mr. Watson.
Well, I am Instagram Stanford Watson dot 71.
Stanford.Watson 71, I think.
Yeah. And then there's Facebook, and
Mhm.
there's the Art Conundrum. I can be found, and there's www.stanfordwatson.weebly.com.
All right. All right. And I'm Tuani Sinclair. I've been your host. All of the links in the description below. Like, subscribe, support us on Patreon. We have a Patreon thing set up now. We're not fully, it's not fully authenticate and thing, but it is there if you want to donate, support the cause. You're welcome to do so. All right.
Tell your
I'm
friends, Kevin.
yeah, friends, family, everything.
Alright.